Welcome to Empathy Empire, where we interview the most empathetic people on the planet. I'm your host, Kim Smiley. Mary Wong is a best-selling author, international speaker, acupuncturist, and high-performance coach, as well as the founder of Alive Holistic Health in Toronto. Mary, I am so thrilled to have you here. You are one of my favorite people in the world, and I say that not lightly. I say that from my heart because you, above anyone else in my life, well, except Matthew, I guess. I'm going to have a cry session today. No, I'm going to try not to cry, but you, I'd say of any health practitioner that I ever dealt with in my life, you helped me realize my dream, which was to become a mom. And I came to see you, I think I was maybe 38 when I first came to see you. I don't remember the exact year, but it was after I had suffered 4 miscarriages. And I had exhausted every option from a medical point of view, from a reproductive endocrinology point of view. And what my reproductive endocrinologist told me was that the best option for me to conceive at my so-called late maternal age was with a donor egg. And I know that that's an amazing option for a lot of women, but that's not the option that I wanted personally and that my husband wanted. We wanted to try to have a baby on our own. And I came to you when like every other option had kind of exhausted itself. And I remember sitting in your office talking to you, and it was such a long first meeting that we had. I think it was an hour and a half, or maybe even 2 hours when I first met with you. And I just felt it was such a different experience because I always felt so rushed when I was going through the medical system, and I was a number and I was called and it was so impersonal and my doctor didn't really know me. But I felt for the first time, a medical practitioner was really listening to me and really hearing me, and most of all, really feeling me. And I remember after that meeting, you said to me, Kim, you're going to have a baby. And I walked out and I told my husband, this woman just told me that we're going to have a baby. And you gave me such a boost when I was feeling hopeless. And it just propped me up. And we did ultimately succeed. And we have 2 children now. My kids are now 5 and 7. And it's thanks to you and also to my friend Amira Posner that I'm living this dream of being a mom. So thank you for being here. I think your wisdom can really help so many people, both women and men, who are going to be watching this and listening.
Thank you. I'm going to start with a disclaimer though, because when I sit with people, I see the possibility. And yet that said, it's not a guarantee.
Right.
So we have many people that come to me for fertility specifically, and they want that magic bullet very quickly.
Yes.
Can you make me present?
Yes.
And what I always say is, I can't force a baby in you. You can't force a baby in you. No matter what pathway you go through, whether it's, with Western intervention or naturally doing it, or the combination of the two, there's just no guarantee, unfortunately. Yet, despite that, there is definitely hope. And you had contacted me, and one of the things that rose up was, when is it too late? When are you too old to have a baby?
Right.
And actually, with technology, it can be very late now.
Like how late?
Can do people. So in the past couple of years, I've literally had a bunch of women at 50 conceiving a baby. Now, they did get help, meaning they did have the donor egg. But it's just, isn't it incredible that this body can house and grow and develop and nurture a child from within, even after menopause?
Even after menopause?
Yes. A couple of cases where they were, okay? So, but if we're coming from the realm of totally naturally trying to conceive, well, you're technically able to conceive a child to term, a healthy baby to term, up until menopause. Like if you have eggs, there is a potential. Now, that said, let's be realistic and know that the odds are obviously more against someone who is, 48 and having their regular menstrual cycle than someone who is 30.
Are people generally coming to you as a last resort when they've exhausted all the other options medically? Or do you see people who are seeing you concurrently as they're seeking help from a reproductive endocrinologist at the same time?
I think more the former initially. And then now there's a delightful new group of people that are more proactive. They're even looking at freezing their eggs, for example. So they're not even in a position to look at trying to build their family in that moment. Yet there's a lot of fear because, oh my gosh, I need to be financially stable. I don't even have a partner yet. I need to have a higher education because when I was growing up, my mother told me I can do anything. So I'm going to do all it takes to be as successful as possible. But in order to do that, I need to put, making a family, having a family, getting married, all that on the back burner.
Right. When I came to you, I was in a state of depletion, psychologically and physically, from just all the pregnancy losses that I had and just like the constant flow of bad news with losing pregnancies. One of them was pretty late term. I think I was 17 weeks with my one that was the latest term. And one of the first things that you said to me is, I don't want you to try to have a baby for the next 3 months because I want to work to create a state of balance and equilibrium in your body.
Correct. And it is the hardest thing that people can do because in life and in business, you think the more I work, the more time I put in, the faster I'll get to what my goals are, which is, either like level up in your career, become a CEO, get a better income, right? Get to the next level. Yet that works in business. However, it does not work at all when it comes to trying to conceive a baby. When you came in, I felt that your body was in this weak position. And your mind is strong, saying, I want this yesterday. But we need to really go deep and communicate with your body. What does it need in this moment right now? Which is, I need to be nurtured. I need to have a moment because you can do whatever the heck you want, but I'm not going to listen. Yet, so let's say you did try to conceive, say, Mary, and this happens all the time. Mary, it's a great idea, but I don't have time to waste. So that thinking may come more from fear and worry. And when our body is in a place of fear and worry, it kind of works against us. And not against us in a way of there's something wrong with my body. It works against us because our body is saying, you need to listen to me. I actually control the show here. And you're just using your mind to try to work things out. And really, I'm going to shut down because I need to protect you. So even if you're trying to conceive and you don't get pregnant, they'll be more upset. And the conversation goes like this: what's wrong with me? I got pregnant and I miscarried, but now can't even get pregnant. What the heck is wrong with me? But if we really dig deep and listen to the body's saying, yeah, it's not time. You can do what you want. And I need to be kind to myself. We're going to be on hibernation mode. I'm going to eat properly, rest properly, and from that, and feel whole and complete again. And that requires time. So when a person like yourself could be in agreement and say, okay, fine, let me give me a couple of months so that I can actually breathe rather than staying on that hamster wheel and running, then the body will just flow more, right? Rather than being in that hyperadrenalized state. And as you know, when a lion chases an animal in the wild, there's no, oh, let's have a baby right now. It's you run. And we're wired. We are in essence mammals. If we feel fear and anxiety, the body will go to a place of fight, flight, freeze. And typically in this place, it's freeze. And so when we're freezing, we're in conservation mode, not very effective for reproducing. So back to, is there something wrong when you don't get pregnant? We might look at it as my body is just being quiet and it's resting and there's nothing wrong. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. How does your work with traditional Chinese medicine, acupuncture, and all those different modalities that you practice, how do you help us slow down and calm the fears and bring about that equilibrium? Because I feel like you were injecting me with balance when I went to see you. Like literally, I would walk out feeling more balanced, and it's extraordinary that it could be that quick. Because I would walk in feeling frazzled, and literally an hour later, I'd walk out and I felt my adrenal system was calm.
Yes.
So, how is it that Chinese medical practice creates that so quickly, that change?
I didn't create the medicine, but what is so awesome, and I witness this day in, day out, is that when we put that needle in, which is a very tiny filiform surgical steel grade needle that doesn't have any hole because we're not injecting anything into you or withdrawing anything. It's a tiny needle, and we place it skillfully just underneath the skin on this higher electrical vibration, which is this connective tissue. It's the fascia tissue. And what's really cool is that in science, they see that now. They'll put like a device, and they can find acupuncture points because they'll go beep, beep, beep. And then when you get hot on the acupuncture point, it'll go beep, beep, beep. We don't have to do that as a skilled practitioner. And what is very cool is that when we tap that needle in, it automatically sends a message to the brain. It releases the feel-good hormones. So when you come in frazzled, your cortisol level is spiked, your adrenals are overtaxed, and we're literally reminding your body to do what it needs to do, which is stop producing the cortisol. Let's release endorphin, which is another hormone. And when we do that, it allows everything to work better. And that is, and in Chinese medicine, if we want to speak in that languaging, we talk about the free flow of energy, qi. And qi, like if you look at the word, the character, it actually also means air, the breath, movement. So we're tapping into this energy that's called qi. And when it gets blocked up, if we look at it as a river or stream of energy, that's where it gets blocked. Whether it's physical or emotionally being fraught, there's energetic constriction. And then we're there to help provide the pathway to open it up.
Everyone has different energy, everyone has different chi. So, when you're practicing traditional Chinese medicine, you're approaching each person completely differently as like a tabula rasa because their energy is different, or are there certain things that are the same across the board no matter who you're treating, just based on traditional Chinese medicine?
So that's a really great question because, as you know, not everybody is, it's not one size fits all. The good news is that we can categorize to a degree. So when it comes to the 5 elements, we all have different kind of elements. So to speak to it directly, so there's fire element, and then we move into the earth element, metal, water, and wood. So we all have all of the elements within us, but each person will be showing up predominantly one way or another. And it can be their blessing, and yet simultaneously it could be their limiting factor. So for example, I'll take me. I'm quite a fiery person, which is great, and I can be social, and it feeds me to be around people. Yet if I do it too much, it can also burn me out. Or if I don't contain my excitement, I can like be running 20 different directions, and that's not going to serve me. So I'll need some kind of metal to contain me, like a container, or the water to kind of douse me down. And so for yourself, you can think of it as, oh gosh, like if I have all the elements and I see you at the earth type, you're motherly, and I mean, this whole concept, this mission that you have, it's very earth centered. And that is in the wheelhouse of the spleen energy and the stomach energy, which is about digesting and taking in and nourishing. So your purpose is to provide nourishment to all others on this planet through empathy. And the Chinese physician, in fact, the oath of a Chinese medicine practitioner follows Sun Miao, who lived in the Tang Dynasty, who lived to 101. And one of the main things for him as a good practitioner is to be able to sit with their patient in their grief and just be with it. Coming from a place of empathy, meaning, can we visualize what it feels like to be them and their story? And so the treatment comes from a place of compassion and empathy. So you're right. Maybe if you go to a practitioner that is much more of a technician, because acupuncture is more and more accepted in the modern world, coming from a place of, well, there's now over 15,000 research articles around acupuncture. So we can come at it from, okay, what specific points did they use? How much time was spent? When exactly was it? How many times? But that's very technical. So I think the art of healing gets missed when we do not incorporate the empathy, the compassion, and really fully knowing the story and understanding where the person's coming from. Because then we can actually go into, well, what is the root of all this? Maybe it's their life that's contributing to this.
So empathy really allows someone to transform from a technical practitioner to a healer.
Yes.
So do you think everyone could be a healer, or do you think that people have a predisposition to it, or can some people maybe just be technicians? I think that might be what separates you from other acupuncturists. Not everyone is a healer. I have never gone to an acupuncturist other than you, but I have some friends who have gone to acupuncturists who've then gone to other acupuncturists, including to you, after it didn't work with that acupuncturist. Is empathy the missing ingredient to become a healer, like in this field in Chinese medicine?
Absolutely. Because with empathy allows you to be able to fully sit and be present and really listen. Without that, I think you can miss the mark. You can come in with a back pain, but if that back pain was brought out because of all the challenges in life that's causing it, and we're not addressing that, I can give you all the acupuncture in the world, but we're not going to, per se, cure it. So that's why, over the years, there's more and more that I delve into people's lives, with permission, of course. I don't intrude into people's lives. And what's beautiful is that the sense of care allows them just to come forth and share with me their deepest, darkest thoughts that they have never even shared with anybody else. And to hide in silence and to feel so alone in the world, that can cause imbalance. Because we know as humans and as mammals, we're not solitary animals. We do actually live in community. Although in our modern society, we live in our single dwellings. So that's not very good for our souls and our development.
I think you just made something click for me. In our sessions together, I would walk in feeling to a certain degree isolated. My husband was extremely supportive, but anyone who goes through this knows that only the person that's experiencing it can really feel what it's like to be struggling with infertility. And I feel like in our sessions together, it was an hour in time where my isolation was mitigated because of the connection I had with you. Through the touch, through the needles, through your empathy, it created a bridge to my soul, not just my body, and allowed me in that moment to feel a tremendous embrace.
That's very beautifully put. And that is what it is. That is part of the power of connection and the relatability. And that's why, before we started this, I said, you know, Chinese medicine is not solely about fertility. A lot of people come to us starting out for their fertility journey. And actually, you know, I'm going to circle back to this. I'm going to go back to what you said. infertility. I really want to address that because I don't believe in that word. I believe in fertility, and you can have challenges in your fertility. And even if you never end up having a child through your womb, I believe that we can have a fertile life. Think of Mother Teresa. She never was married. She didn't have children. They called her Mother Teresa. You can mother a community. You can mother in certain ways. Having this podcast, having this empathy empire, that's a way of mothering the world, whether you had children or not.
Yes.
So when it comes to, and it's funny because I was at an event yesterday, a charity event, and every time they talked infertility, my infertility journey, I'm like, well, why don't we talk about your fertility journey? However that is. Does that land differently when I say infertility versus fertility?
Yes. One of the things that I've always said is that when you walk into a reproductive endocrinologist's office, it's like you have a disease. They pathologize you from like when you walk in the door. And I think taking it from a perspective of wellness rather than sickness reframes the whole conversation and experience.
Yes, 100%. And that again lies in the evolution of Chinese medicine. Because back in the day, the emperor would have his physician and he was paid only when he was well and he was not paid when he was sick. So it's all about proactivity in their health journey. So when you asked me earlier about when people come to you, are they on their last leg? Unfortunately or fortunately, yes, many people come in, Mary, I've done 3 IVFs, it didn't work. And I thought, gosh, we're going to hunker down and do something different. And I think, awesome for you. And then I think, wouldn't it have been even better if we can reach these people that have not even began to go on their IVF journey? Can we have made a difference in a different way? Because let's say, if we go specifically and talk about in vitro fertilization, which is literally, let's put some drugs in you, harvest as many eggs as we can so that we can later on retrieve them, and then let's inject some sperm into it, and then let's hope for embryo creation. And then now, wait a minute, instead of putting it straight back into you, let's test them to see that they're genetically normal. So there's so much intervention, and I am grateful for that. Yet the missing link is, well, what are we doing for you as you go through this? How are you really? How are you feeling how do you feel about injecting yourself? Is it difficult to manage work where, you have to go to the fertility clinic almost every single day? How are you doing? So how can we help people respond better to their drugs even? Because if they're in a more calm state of mind and in body, then perhaps they'll actually respond even better. And not only that, when we look at what they want to do, which is to increase the number of eggs being produced in one menstrual cycle, which normally we only drop 1 egg. Here we're wanting to get it out as many as possible in one shot. So it's like, okay, there's only so much gas in the tank. So now we're going to divide it in with so normally it goes to that 1 egg, 1 car, and now you want to divide it up to with, 10 cars. So how well are they going to drive? Are they going to even get out of the driveway? So have I not witnessed people that'll do an IVF or 2? They say, Mary, they tried to fertilize it. It didn't even work. I am so devastated. And then you think that that's the rest of your life, that this is how it's going to go because I'm reproductively old. After you're 35, you're considered geriatric, right?
Right.
And so now we have to undo that limiting belief. Now, not to say that we're not getting older. That's a reality. I can't stop that. At the same time, if we can work with the body, if we can get to the energy where it needs to go, which is the reproductive organs, which is not necessary for survival, because you and I can take out our ovaries and uterus and still be thriving. So how can we get the energy more into the ovaries, into the uterus, so that it can be juicy, have the capacity to get oxygenated, provide more nutrients, provide more hormones to develop so that we can enhance. And instead of, one car out of the driveway, we can get a bunch of cars out of the driveway and actually it'll drive.
Dialing back a little bit in terms of how people find out about you and how to work with you. I found out about you through a friend, Amira Posner, who's a fertility counselor. She happens to be my friend too. She's the one who told me about you. But do doctors recommend you, reproductive endocrinologists, or how is it that people find out about you?
What happens is, in reality, like, I know a lot of the physicians that are in the reproductive endocrinology field. I go to all the Western conferences. There's the Canadian Fertility Andrology Society annual meeting. I go to those. I've presented at these annual meetings. So I am known in the community. And there's full and good intention of, you know what, let's provide different resources. But I'll tell you, when you're a physician who sees a gazillion patients in a day and they're looking through their lens, they're going to forget. Of course, they're going to forget. So we have to wrap our brain around, okay, how can we intervene in a way that allows people to have more access? And maybe even access even before going to the fertility clinic. Because I have personally requested people to see a fertility doctor or go back to their physician and get some testing, because I believe in integration. I believe in knowledge, and the Western testing I can't do. And I think that's great information. I just won't rely on it solely. And I myself had a journey for fertility, and I did use technology to the nth degree. And so I'm grateful. I have a child who's no longer, well, she's still a child, definitely. She's 12. But, without technology, she would not be here today. And I had technical challenges. I had blocked fallopian tubes that were fluid filled, that was irreversible. They had to surgically remove them. So no way was I going to be able to have a child naturally and, go on a holiday and relax. It was just not in the cards. And I'm grateful for that journey because it allows me to fully be able to sit with someone and fully get that conversation and what it feels like to go to the fertility clinic.
Was your personal experience with fertility what prompted you to delve deeper into fertility in your professional life?
It's a great question because I'll tell you, and I'll backtrack even more. Fertility found me, Chinese medicine found me. My intention all along, I don't know if you know this about me, but I was like almost anti-Chinese growing up. I was born in the Netherlands, which is like a sea of blonde-haired, blue-eyed people. And my brother and I, my older brother and I, my younger brother wasn't born yet, we were the only Asians. There was one black girl and there were two Asians, my brother and I. So when we moved to Canada and I was 8, I was like, I am going to fit right in. I don't want to, I was pretending I was white. I'm like obviously a visible minority, but I didn't want anything to do with the Chinese culture at all. So when my parents spoke to me in English, or Chinese rather, I would speak back in English, loud and proud, when we were in public. So when my grandmother was diagnosed in the hospital and said, she's old, her kidneys are failing, she has 2 weeks to live, it was my brother who said, oh, we're Chinese, maybe we should try Chinese medicine. And so we went back home. And back in the day when there were the yellow pages, we, let the fingers do the walking. We found a Chinese medicine practitioner who was like 1,000 years old and worked in Chinatown. And it was during my summer break in second year university. And back in the day at second year university, you can apply for med school because that was in my sights that whole time. I wanted to go into medicine. I wanted to help people. And when I was the one who brought my grandmother to her appointments every week, twice a week for acupuncture, I was amazed because at first it's like, we just want to make her comfortable. She's going to die at home and we'll be surrounding her with love. And she not only recovered, but she recovered and within 3 months, and she lived another 8 years. So in that moment, during that summer, I thought, oh my goodness, here's a system of medicine that I've fallen in love with, and yet it had failed us. And now this system of medicine that has been around for thousands of years with its ancient wisdom has shown up in my life. And in that moment, I thought, my job is to bridge that gap, to provide access for people. So working initially as more of a generalist, seeing everything from under the sun, because Chinese medicine really is meant to treat anything, anytime, anywhere, because it's proactive. So it's about well-being in mind, body, and spirit. And knowing, like all women, well, maybe not all women, but a lot of women in the cosmopolitan area who wants higher education, who wants to do well, who wants to be financially independent, I was that person who knew that I would be delaying my own reproduction. So I was interested, but I had no doubt in my mind that I would, I'm like, I'm gonna get it. I'll get pregnant very easily. Because both my grandmothers were 46. No one told them that they were too old to have kids. So I thought it would be easy for me until I was brought to my knees finding out that I had blocked fallopian tubes that were irreversible. So instead of taking it and beating myself up, I just thought, wow, why don't I use this as an opportunity? Because I say I want to bridge the gap, but really I hadn't bridged the gap at all. I was like, no to you, yes to this. So now I had to embrace science myself. So it was a great opportunity. And since then, I had forged lots of relationships with the reproductive endocrinology world. And so I'm blessed, and I'm blessed to be able to guide the way for women and couples in their lives, trying to build their family. And now, because I'm so far away from that, like I'm 56, and I've gone through different transitions from the challenges of trying to conceive to the challenges of during pregnancy to the challenges postpartum to then going straight into perimenopause and menopause. There's challenges in every stage. It's like,
Definitely.
wow. So now the conversation when people walk in for their fertility journey, it's like, okay, well, how can we help you thrive? Not just now to have that baby in your belly, but how about once the baby's there showing up, how are you going to thrive so that you're going to be around for a very long time because you have responsibility? So what's it going to take? What are you going to do for your life?
So, what does it take to thrive as a woman? Not talking about fertility now, but just generally, what are we doing wrong and what are we doing right? And what could we do more of from your perspective with all your experience?
Well, one thing that we're doing right in the very current climate is that women are standing up for themselves and saying, you know what? I am a woman. I actually have a menstrual cycle and there are hormonal shifts. I hear more and more about people talking about this, but back in the day, we don't talk about menopause. We don't talk about fertility challenges. We don't talk about feeling crazy and angry all the time when you're in perimenopause, but it's a reality for some women, or the hot flashes or the challenges with sleep. Normalizing the conversation and knowing that, number one, I'm not alone. Number two, I'm not crazy. Number three is that sometimes it's not as smooth as you think. And thankfully, there's lots of things that you can do to help, right? So acupuncture helps, looking at the dietary lifestyle, shifting that can help. Having community, we talked about community, having, well, movement, connecting with nature, all of that can help. But the big piece for me is you don't have to do it alone. You don't have to suffer in silence. And we are taught at a very young age. And back in the day when, tampons were one of the most popular things, the message is when you got your menstrual period, you plug yourself up and you pretend everything's normal and you just carry on with your day. It's like, wow, we need to honor who we are as women. And just know that it's actually normal and natural to feel a bit more tired when you're menstruating because you're literally leaking out blood. And in Chinese medicine, we say that menstruation, miscarriage, childbirth, and lactation, producing milk, are the most energy consuming acts a woman go through. So it leaches out energy, leaches out essence, the jing qi, the blood, the yin fluids, the body fluids. And so why are we working ourselves to the bone in that particular time? Can we live a life of balance by understanding our bodies? And you know what? Maybe I will like be super extra productive when I'm around my menstruation. Oh, sorry, not around my menstruation, around ovulation, and be a little bit more going inside of myself and respecting and honoring that I'm a woman when I'm menstrual. That's a way to be healthier. So being in tune with ourselves, finding community. And when we did have a village, we lived in like a commune where the elders would guide the way. So finding your elder, even if it is these days a paid elder, right? Because we don't even have that community. So don't we outsource now, which includes even cleaning your home. We outsource that too. And it's not bad or wrong. And in fact, I think it's pretty brilliant because we're so isolated and we need help. And there's nothing wrong with that. And for those of you who's like, oh no, I can't have a house cleaner because that just means that I'm weak. I should be able to do it all. I say, no, embrace, if you have the financial means, why not? And so then you can, if there's only so much energy in our bodies and in our minds and in our spirit and in our hearts, why not put that energy to, if you don't love to clean, get someone else to clean and put your energy to where you can really make a difference.
You don't just treat fertility, you treat all kinds of different things. And I know that often people go to the emergency room when they have like a urgent issue of something that seems like very serious medically.
And so they should.
And so they should, 100%. And, obviously it's preventative, a lot of the work that you do, but I actually, just to do a little more sharing today, I actually had a medical issue that I went to all different types of specialists. It was 5 or 6 years ago. I had a medical issue. I don't know if you remember, but you probably do. And I wasn't able to swallow. And so I lost a tremendous amount of weight. Like I lost, I think, over 20 pounds. And I had all kinds of tests done with a gastroenterologist, and they checked me, and I was fine physically. But I was really, really struggling. And I came to you, and it was after I had Sam. He was a year old, actually. So he was a year old. So that would be 6 years ago.
Right.
And I came to you, and it was incredible what happened. You looked at me and you said,
I don't remember this. I'm like, oh, tell me, okay, I'm going to sit back.
you looked at me and you said, after I described the way that I was feeling, and I'm not sure if you looked at my tongue, and I know that that's one of the primary ways that Chinese medical practitioners practice. They look at the tongue. We'll talk about that in a second. But you talked to me for about 10 minutes, and then you said, it's plum pit chi.
Yes, okay, I remember.
Do you remember
that.
now?
Yes, of course.
And I was like, excuse me?
It's like, what the heck is that?
I thought it was Chinese, and you're like, no, it's a plum pit is stuck in your energy field.
It feels like a
Yes, it feels like a plum pit is stuck in the energy field in your throat. And that is preventing you from feeling like you could swallow. It's the energy. It's not an actual physical block. And in that moment, I had this epiphany of something that I had been dreaming about every night that I consciously wasn't remembering when I was awake, but you triggered the realization for me of something that I was dreaming about. And it was such a powerful experience because after I realized what the systemic cause was psychologically, I was able to swallow again.
And isn't that incredible? Because how long were you like going through the scientific route?
Months.
Yeah.
Months. And no one could give me an answer. And I was wondering what was psychologically wrong with me. And it was in that moment with you that everything just became clear. I'm not going to get into why I had that. That's a little too personal to share, but it was extraordinary because something that had been blocked for months in a matter of 10 minutes was unblocked. And it was life changing for me. And I was able to eat and digest. And, it's interesting because you said at the beginning that I was earth. So digestion is an issue for me and is an issue for, I think, a lot of women and men. And it was miraculous to me. And that was in part, I think, just your empathy that was able to see what was happening just in terms of the way that we were interacting. So that's another experience and touchstone that I've had with you, because I want to bring this conversation now a little bit away from fertility and just talk about general health, and not just general women's health, but just general health, because you're a fountain of knowledge for that as well. And some of our listeners and viewers are not just women. We have men as well.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, Chinese medicine is more based about health and longevity. And it's very funny now that I see there's more of this, the longevity expert. It's like, oh, well, Chinese medicine's been talking about this for thousands of years. Hence, I talked to you about Sun Tzu Miao earlier, and 1901, our average lifespan was 48.6 or 9, something like that. But he lived in the Tang Dynasty, 682 AD, something like that is when he died at 101. So what were his secrets of longevity? And that's part of the Chinese medicine.
Okay, so share some of the secrets with us.
Some of the secrets?
Please.
Well, his secret would be that to be able to be empathetic, to be compassionate, and not chase dreams that are based on material goods. Listen, we all like material goods. I mean, clothing, well, we kind of need clothing these days, but um, one may argue no, we could live in a society without clothes.
Yes.
But I'm a little modest. So there is, it's okay to have material goods as long as we just don't focus on it and that's all it is, because it's empty. Because if we find fulfillment through material goods, I'll tell you what will happen. You'll be happy for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, a month, and then you'll want to buy something else. So it's a form of therapy, but it's just it's a symptomatic relief. So bringing it back to the health longevity and the happiness quotient, it's how can we live our lives with a purpose, right? For Sun Tzu Miao, it's again to be able to sit with someone, to sit in their grief without judgment, and to be able to treat people without judgment. So no matter what the skin color or socioeconomic status or gender identity or anything like that, it's like it's human to human. So it's back to human connection. And isn't empathy require that as part of the equation? You can't have empathy just by yourself and that's it. Not in silos.
Tell me, what are some of the most common health myths that you could dispel for us in this conversation?
When I think of that question, the first thing that comes to mind is the myth that whatever your mother or father has gone through, I'll have the same thing. And that's not real. It's part of the equation. So for example, if your parents have diabetes, type 2 diabetes, then I am destined to be diabetic. And then we live into that possibility. And I say, there may be a genetic component for sure. And there's so many things that you can do so that you don't have to go there. And I say this because I'm living that life. I do not have diabetes. And both my parents are type 2 diabetics. My father has gone to a place where he now injects himself. And he has high blood pressure meds. And he definitely has heart disposition. And that's all life induced. And it breaks my heart because in my mind, it's like, if you only do this, and yet I'm empathetic because he says, Mary, if I don't eat the way I'd like to eat, I might as well be dead.
Right.
So I empathize, and yet I'm proud of him because now what he's doing is he's walking with my mom every day. And that's actually one of the best things you can do if you have type 2 diabetes or diabetes at all, any kind of blood sugar thing. You can go for a walk, and the best time for a walk is after every meal, if you can do it.
Did you have gestational diabetes?
I did not. No. And some women, no matter what they do, they'll still get it. And it's not something to beat yourself up about because it's quite common. I see it. Now, for sure, so if it's in your family, you may have a higher chance. Secondly, if you have PCOS, you have a higher disposition towards it as well, polycystic ovarian syndrome, because that condition in of itself tells us that you have insulin resistance.
I think also if you're over 35, you're more predisposed.
Yes. So the older you are, the higher the chances of getting gestational diabetes and type 2 beyond, being pregnant.
I had gestational diabetes with my first, but not with my second.
And what was the difference? And so technically speaking, by the way, you're a couple of years older, right? So you would think that, oh, well, then the second time I'll for sure get it. But you didn't. What was the difference?
One, the difference was the gender of the baby. So my endocrinologist told me that there's a higher propensity towards gestational diabetes if you're having a boy. And, it's interesting. The first time I tested, I was flagged. And I had to do the really disgusting test where you drink the liquid and you sit for 3 hours. And then I was negative with my second child. So I don't know what the difference was.
So you didn't do anything differently?
I don't think so.
So that's interesting too, because, well, I would also argue there's a couple of things at play. So one, you're completely in a different frame of mind. You're firstborn, when you're pregnant, it's you are so keyed into that pregnancy. Meaning when you've had 4 losses, you don't take a breather. Like you're not sitting back and, oh yeah, I'm pregnant. It's all good and peachy. Am I correct?
You're correct to a certain degree, but I was almost euphoric during that pregnancy because I was so grateful that I was pregnant that my euphoria was so intense. And I almost was that stereotype of a pregnant woman that you read about and that everyone says is ridiculous. I felt so good during that pregnancy, even though I had gestational diabetes and had to administer insulin every day to myself. So it was very strange. Whereas with my daughter, it was a very hard pregnancy, even though I didn't have gestational diabetes. Like with the first pregnancy, I had bionic energy. With the second pregnancy, I felt extremely depleted. And
so were you more careful then with your diet because you were depleted?
I was incredibly careful when I had gestational diabetes because I was being followed every week by an endocrinologist and I had to report what I was eating.
Of course.
There's a sense of shame also when you're going through a pregnancy and you're diabetic. There's a sense of shame I felt. Like every time I would test my blood sugar, I'd feel a sense of shame if it was too high. Even though
it's your fault.
Like it's my fault.
Yes,
it was like a biological reaction. It wasn't my fault.
No.
And intellectually I knew that, but it was very hard to shake that sense of shame. Whereas with my daughter, no, I wasn't as careful with what I was eating. I wasn't.
So it's interesting because mindset, like we know, and in science we know this too, where our mind can impact our physiology. So either way, you were in a different state of mind.
Totally.
A different way of being.
The other thing I would say is that I never expected to have another baby. So the second baby was a bonus. So yes. I was in a very different frame of mind than the first time.
Yes, that's actually where I'm going from that.
Okay.
Right? Because that pregnancy came easy. You weren't even in the position. You weren't even thinking about it. Whereas the first one, it's like, this was your special, precious baby. So a lot of energy went in here.
Tons of energy.
Meaning, for those who are just listening to the podcast,
you're pointing to your head.
To my head.
So much energy went into my mental processing. And it was a completely different pregnancy. One of the other things that I noticed is that I almost felt like because the second one was a girl, it was using more of my Shakti, more of my feminine energy. Whereas with my son, he wasn't drawing on my feminine energy. So I had this incredible abundance of feminine creative energy during my pregnancy with him. Whereas with Maya, my daughter, she was taking all of my energy in order to be created. as soon as I delivered her, my feminine energy came back. And I don't know if you have anything to say about that from like a Chinese perspective, but that's more like from a Hindu perspective or from an Indic perspective, that whole idea of Shakti and feminine divine energy. But it was instantaneous in the same way that as soon as I gave birth to Sam, I didn't have diabetes anymore.
Yes.
As soon as I gave birth to Maya, I had my creative energy back. I was flatlined creatively for 9 months when I was pregnant with
Because
Maya.
she sucked it dry.
She sucked it dry.
Yes. So you're right, because so in Chinese medicine, we talk about yin yang energy.
Right.
So the feminine energy is yin, which is inward, dark, composing, nurturing. So she was literally sucking that part out of you.
Yes.
Like a leech. And then creating a boy, it's a yang energy, vibrant energy. And so you might have tapped into that. And, you know, coming from science, there's also much testosterone as he's building up and developing within his little body.
Interesting, because I felt like I could lift a car when I was pregnant with him. So it's almost like I was absorbing some of the testosterone when I was pregnant with him.
So interesting.
But technically, I guess you could say, sick when I was pregnant with him because I had a disease.
Yes.
I had diabetes. Whereas with her, I didn't. But I felt sick with her and I didn't feel sick with him. And maybe that's because I was taking insulin to
Yes.
sort of remedy the biological deficiency in my body.
Yes.
But I think it's interesting to consider it from a yin yang. You know that the empathy effect and the empathy empire, the logo is,
Yeah, that's right. It's
right?
a yin yang.
It's a variation of a yin yang that my brother actually came up with. I want to talk to you about interconnectivity. And I think just drawing on what you were saying about community, there's that sense of interconnection there. But let's talk about interconnection and Chinese medicine. When we're in community, when we have that group of people surrounding us to help us thrive, I think it's hard to thrive when we're isolated. I think interconnection is almost like a indicator of health.
It is definitely part of health. And, you know, relationships, community. That's why I'm saying, like, in the modern times, it's very difficult. And you see more and more, especially through the pandemic, how there's more and more mental health challenges, as well as physiological challenges, because there was that lack of connection. People are isolated and alone. And on the one hand, they think, oh, I'm fine. This is how it will be, and I'm okay. And they don't realize the power of connection and its impact on our physical, mental, emotional, spiritual state.
Do you treat physical illness in a different way than you treat a mental struggle or illness that someone is experiencing? Is there a difference in Chinese medicine?
It's a really great question. So here's the reality. Chinese medicine, we talk about the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual plane is on the same continuum. So there is no separation. When you come in for a physical problem, depending on the person, if they think that acupuncture is woo-woo, I'm not going to go there. But I know in my head it is way beyond. Or I'll say it in a very light way that they can receive the message. You know, what's going on in your life? Maybe you're a little bit more stressed, and so that's why your neck is a bit more sore. Or you're carrying the world on your shoulders, and it gets reflected back in your head and neck. What is your pain telling you? So it's all part of a continuum. So and if a person comes in specifically, I'm overwhelmed, I'm stressed, I'm anxious, please help me. Well, it's through their physical body that we tap the needles in that can help to release their emotional angst in their spirit. And then, of course, I delve in and ask, you know, what else is going on in your life that might contribute to this? Without being a therapist. I'm not a therapist, so people can go to a mirror for something like that. Yet at the same time, as a TCM physician, I think it's important. The more information we have, it can inform us in the treatment that we provide.
Just picking up on something you said, does anyone come to you who thinks acupuncture is woo-woo and they're just kind of like coming to you just sort of like because their parents or their sibling or their life partner said, you know, just try it. You've exhausted all the other options. And the follow-up question to that would be, can you help those people?
Great great question. I actually love treating those kinds of people and not coming from a position of, oh, I need to prove to them. Not at all. In fact, I'll say the opposite. I'll say, which is a reality. If you expect me to be able to fix your back, and this has been going on for 20 years, wow, that would be magical. How long do you think it can really take? I mean, if you have a cut on your arm, how long does it take for your body to heal itself? So we're just basically trying to assist our natural healing. We accelerate the process. Back to your plum pit chi, we accelerated the process, and wow, gangbusters though, right?
Totally.
10 minutes.
10 minutes.
That's all it took. It was magic. I love magic, but I will never profess or say that I can create magic in this treatment. Ever. I would never say that. It's so when you ask then about can that person have acupuncture be effective for them? It can be, for sure. I have wowed people, right? Where I remember this person in particular years ago came in and said, Mary, my wife forced me to come in here. She swears by you, but I don't believe in anything that you're doing. I just want you to know. So I'm like, okay. I'm like, that's fine. But if you believe that one and done is like the answer, like it's not it. So you're like, I'll do the treatment today, but you're welcome to leave, right? Like, I don't want to really deal with that anyway. It takes time, to learn a musical instrument. You can't just like try the piano for one session and think that you're going to become a concert pianist.
Of course. So what happened with that person?
He felt a difference immediately. He came back the next week and the week after that. And he got better and better and better over time.
People think that acupuncture is painful. I think that's just the general perception, but it's actually not painful. Do you want to speak to that? There's a fear about acupuncture, putting needles in your body.
Yes. Okay. Absolutely. So that's a myth. A myth that now in the right hands, if you go to someone that took a weekend course and did acupuncture,
Yes.
I'm pretty clear that that one would hurt.
Yes.
There is an art to it. The good news is the needles that we use are super thin. And there's also different quality to the needles. So they're just different producers. Like, I don't want to get into the technical piece, but there are needles that are less painful.
Okay.
And then the actual proficiency of the physician that does the needle dispensing is helpful, right? But in of itself, the gauge of needles are so tiny. And I wish that they could come up with another name than needles, to be honest. Because when you think of a needle, there's a stereotype. Like you have this imagination. It's like, it's going to hurt and you'll anticipate pain. What do you do when you anticipate pain? You're going to cringe and contract, which actually makes the needle insertion more difficult. Yes. But in skilled hands, it doesn't matter, because it will penetrate it through it very quickly. And what's really interesting too is that people think, oh, the deeper they go, the more it's going to hurt. Actually, no, the skin sensory system at the top of the skin, that's all. That's what we have to go through. Because when I touch you, you feel it. So we need to go through that really darn fast, and then you feel nothing. So as long as you go through the skin, and we don't aim for blood vessels, we don't aim for nerves, because actually, if we do aim for nerves, it would hurt. So we don't aim for that. So then acupuncture points reside where the electrical resistance is higher, meaning it doesn't take a heck of a lot of energy and stimulation to really tap into the body and elicit a response. That chi response to instigate the chi flow, the blood flow, the hormones, the oxygen, the nourishment, all of that gets activated. Or we can also say the sympathetic nervous system gets deactivated. The whole fight or flight thing. It's like we got to settle it down. So when you come in anxious and like blah, going a million miles a minute, I know that when we have you lie down and even a couple of needles in, your body will just respond and relax and receive. And even those people that are quite anticipatory, you'll see them relax quite quickly, even with fear. We'll have people that are frightfully afraid of needles. And they come in because they're like, this is my last chance.
Right. Yes.
And so instead of putting in the needles immediately, what we need to do is fully connect. Because otherwise, it's a violation. Because intellectually, they're like, oh, okay, this helped my friend, so it has to work for me, but I'm so scared of needles, I'm a fainter, but I'm going to force myself to do it because I heard it's good for me. So knowing that conversation, there's no way in hell I'm going to go just put in needles right away. There has to be that trust. We have to unblock that first.
Is there a point on the body that's associated with empathy? Can a needle kind of open up that area that's associated with empathy, or is that not a thing?
I mean, words are construct. So I'm not going to say it. This is the empathy point. I could say it. There's lots of different functions for different points.
Would it be the heart chakra? Would it be, where would it be on the body? Like in terms of the, and do you work toward on the seven chakra system?
So I know you're very familiar with the Indian culture and the chakras. So we don't speak chakra, yet at the same time, there's so much overlap.
Okay.
Right? So the top of the head, Bai Hui, which is a place of 100 meetings,
Which is
all
the
the yang
crown,
channels,
the
yeah,
crown chakra.
the
Yeah.
crown chakra. So that is a great point to tap into because it literally connects with all of the body. I love it. It's love and light, and you know, it opens up into the heavens. It's very young, but then it connects and grounds. So that is a point. Is there the point? I would say no. And of course, as I told you earlier, we're all individuals. So what works for one may be different for another. If a person's very depleted, we'll use points that will nourish them more. If a person is really stagnated and highly inflamed, we need to actually release them more. So it's a different strategy. If they're stagnant because of what we call damp phlegm, so if we look at the body as nature and it's like a body geography where we mimic the earth, we're about 70% water. We want that water to be flowing as though it's water and like a stream, like the ocean, not a blocked up. And so acupuncture can help to open the blockages. And so if a point is stuck over here at the top of the body and there's nothing going downstairs, we want to open it up so there's more energy, more blood flow, more jing qi flowing down below, or vice versa.
Are you able to identify ailments just by looking at someone? I know that, as I mentioned before, the tongue is like an area that you look at very early on when you're, I remember in our first meeting, it was one of the first things, can I see your tongue? But are you able to just look at someone and see if they're healthy? Like someone walking on the street? Or is it that's not a thing?
It can be a thing. There's a lot of hidden things. So for example, so it's in the Chinese medicine that is focused more on the 5 elements. So we talk about the 5 senses, and we can actually sense the 5 senses of the individual. So I don't know if you've ever encountered it. Aside from body odor, some people, if they're quite sick, there is a certain odor to them.
I have encountered that, yes. I think in hospitals, you could smell sickness.
You can smell sickness. So it's about fine tuning that and smelling it before it gets too far gone, before they're in palliative care. So smell is one. And looking at their shen, the spirit of their eyes, are they all there? Because if you're in a lot of pain, your shen is weakened. You're not fully present and engaged. Hear how they speak. So is the sound of the voice wavering? Is the sound of the voice almost like a shout? Is it more melodic? And that tells us what disposition they have. And by feeling them, and of course, traditionally, in the pulse taking. So the pulse taking is through the radial artery, traditionally of the arms, hands, by the wrists, both hands. And depending on where you are, and we use 3 fingers on each side, and they reflect different areas of the body. I didn't make it up. It's very cool that depending on where you press, you actually can feel the different energy systems of the body. So for example, typically the left-hand side of the body, if it feels like a guitar string, and it can, and it's very, very common in our society, we say there's a lot, that is a sign of stagnation, and more specifically, liver qi stagnation. And again, it's prevalent because we live in a very fast-paced society. We want to do 1,000 things in a day, overscheduled. And one of the imbalances that we create for ourselves is unfulfilled desires, as well as creating expectations. And Chinese medicine is based on Taoism, and the Tao is about going with the flow and being one with nature. And in our world and in the way we live, we've gone a little far from that balance, left of center, some more than others. And that's why you may or may not notice this, but if you go for a walk and go to a park and smell the air and listen to the birds and hear the wind rustling against the leaves of it feels good because we're connecting to the universal energy, life energy. And so when we going back to, can we feel illness? To a certain extent, we can, even before it gets into a very bad place. Like I said, when you're mentioning going to a hospital, that you don't need that expertise. It's like blatantly there. Wow, I can smell that, right? I think everyone can identify with that, unless they physically have a nasal problem. Then you don't smell it. And you can see it in the coloring of a person. You can also see it in the way they carry themselves, posture. You can see it in the hair, if it's brittle, if it's healthy, shining. Now, it gets a little skewed because a lot of women or men, or people, they dye their hair lots and they strip it and they bleach it. So then you don't really know the vitality that's underneath, because maybe they are healthy, but it's just overstripping.
Right.
Did I answer your question?
Yes,
Okay.
you did. Any last thoughts about empathy, Chinese medicine, acupuncture, community that you'd like to share with the people listening and watching?
Well, the very first thing I would say is Chinese medicine. Of course, I'm biased now. I came from like a non-believer to I'm fully immersed in it. To me, acupuncture, Chinese medicine is a way of life. And so it can be incorporated as part of life, not just when you're sick, not just when you can't conceive, not just when you're nauseous or whatever that may be. To me, it's something that we can call on your friend to be able to keep you supported and to help you thrive. Acupuncture is not painful, and you have to go to the right practitioner. And there are plenty of great ones. And in life, we talked about this over and over again. It's not about going at it all alone. And so, yes, people in our community would love to help and be a part of the conversation and be part of the healing. And what is so brilliant about this medicine is that we're basically assisting you to heal yourself. We're your guide. I don't claim to be the master. I actually don't even claim myself to be a healer, if you want to know the truth. But I'm a master at sitting with someone and guiding them through out of the darkness.
That's a beautiful ending. How could people reach you?
So you can go to a live holistic health clinic, You can find our podcast, My Fertology, which is actually going to be changing. The name's going to be changing, so we have to watch out for that. But you can certainly follow us on Instagram at Alive Holistic Health Clinic. And me personally, it'd be at Meet Mary Wong.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you for having me.